to India and Ireland, round Africa and back again. We don't really need to know just where we'll go. Maybe Canada, then to Brazil, then through the Alpine foothills. All I really want to know is, can we go? Oh baby, can we go? Round and around the globe.
Welcome to Take Me With You, episode 98. I'm Ryan,
And I'm Cheryl. We are two well-traveled people who want to go everywhere.
but that's not going to happen. So instead, we'll travel vicariously by inviting a guest to share their unique travel stories with us.
Today, we're talking with Sommer. Sommer is a travel advisor and the first one on our show. Welcome, Sommer.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, we're so excited to have you. And I had a faux pas right out of the gate when I was messaging you. And I was like, okay, travel agent. And you were like, actually, it's travel advisor now.
Right. It's kind of switched terms just so that people understand that there is much more than just like coordinating schedules in it. There's an advisement of, things to do, people to see, places to go, timing, tempo, and things like that. So it's kind of been switched to travel
Nice.
advisor is the new term.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, we're very happy to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I could talk for hours about travel, so it's great.
Oh,
Then you're
good.
in the right place.
Yeah.
Right. I'm with
Because
my
we
people.
do talk about hours for about travel.
Yes.
So we're going to start with just a few questions that we like to ask all our guests, and then we'll have you tell us a little bit more about being a travel advisor.
Awesome.
So the first question is, why do you travel?
So that's a good question. I am innately a people person. So my motivation for travel really revolves around my love for meeting new people and experiencing different places through the eyes of the people that live there. So I love to do that myself. I was raised in a family with a dad who loved to travel. So I started early on traveling. And the beauty and the Instagrammable pictures are wonderful, but to me, the beauty of travel is experiencing the world through different lenses. So for me, that's my motivation. So whenever I go anywhere, I just want to talk to people that live there. I want to hear their accent. I want to hear what they do in a day, and so that's really my driving force to travel. Is enjoying the culture and people around the world, even within our own country. I mean, even like just going south, I went to New Orleans and experiencing like just listening to that Southern accent. Just I could have been like lulled to sleep by that Southern accent, and just the different kinds of food that are eaten there, and the different culture and how New Orleans was built, and the foundational roots of the immigrants that came to New Orleans. I mean, so just even within our own country, and just exploring. I'm from the Northwest, and we have a different way of living as compared to people on the East Coast and down south and in the deserts of the country. So I just love people. So that's my main motivation to travel.
I love that. I'm curious. I'm a people person too, and I love when I can meet locals in another culture. What does it look like for you to go about meeting people and interacting with them? Are you pretty outgoing? Will you just walk up and start talking to people or making connections? What does that look like for you?
Right. So I don't want to be a weirdo. So it's not like I'm accosting people on the street being like, talk to me. Like right before everything shut down, I was in Ireland for a week, and I got to go to Ireland, and that was the first time
Nice.
I'd been to Ireland. And I just love to go. I just even like to observe. It's not necessarily that I'm like walking up to someone and interviewing them like, what is it like to live here? What is your daily life like? It's really just more of a casual, like if I'm going to be in Ireland, I want to go to the Irish pubs, and I want to sit and listen to the live music and just listen to people, like just even eavesdrop in their conversation. What are they talking about? Like what's important to them? Or my waiter, whenever I have any interaction with someone like a tour guide or a waiter or anything, I am like racking them with questions about their life. Like,
Hmm.
What do you do in the day? Like what are your favorite foods to eat? What is education like here? Or, just different things, and I just listen. I don't have any agenda, and I don't have any well, that's right and that's wrong. It's just me trying to understand what makes them tick. So it's
Mm.
more natural, just whoever I happen to be interacting with, it, whether it's my waiter or my tour guide or someone like that.
Mm.
What I really
That's
like
awesome.
about that is that feels very approachable and very doable, right?
Mm.
Like Cheryl's a big people person. I'm not as big of a people person. Not that I don't like people. That's not what gets me super excited the way it does with Cheryl. But even just
Mhm.
saying, like your example of just talking to the waiter or the tour guide or those things, that feels like a really accessible, easy way to start to get to know local people, even if it's
Right.
not going out on your own into the alleyways and just meeting strangers, because that would freak me out.
Right. Right.
So I appreciate that.
It's all like in safe places. Like
Yeah.
I'm a woman, and when I'm in a foreign country and I'm a woman, I don't necessarily always I wouldn't walk down a dark alley and just tap
Yeah.
someone standing on the side of the street and start grilling them. It has to be in safe places where I feel like
Yeah.
where it's safe. I mean, even like I said, in New Orleans, my husband and I went to New Orleans, and we just sat down at this iconic restaurant in New Orleans, and our waiter, I just was like, "Where are you from?" Like, where
Mm.
he was from the Ninth Ward, which was the hardest hit area of Katrina. And I was interested in
Mm.
that. I was like, what's that been like to live in that? And he talked about his pet bunny, and like, anyway, it was just fascinating. I mean, it just
Mm.
doesn't even matter. So what I'm saying is, you can learn so much even within our own country. You don't have to
Mm.
necessarily travel the
Yeah.
world to understand people and try to understand where they're coming from and the life that they live. And I
Mm.
think that breeds kindness, and it breeds like
Yes.
it breeds like more empathy in the world. So
Yeah.
if we just all have that kind of sense of wonder when we meet people, that's just the absolute best part of travel to me.
Mm. I love that.
That's awesome. All right. Second question. What type of traveler are you?
So I I am a go-go-goer. I have a battery in the back of my back that my dad passed on to me. And so unfortunately, here's a funny story. When my first travel with my husband was our honeymoon, and we went to the Bahamas. And we hadn't vacationed together before our honeymoon. And so I planned out our honeymoon, even though he was in charge of it. I totally planned it out because that's how I roll. I mean, hence I'm a travel advisor. It was like in my blood. And so I planned it out, and um like, it was our very first trip together, and I we quickly learned that we are not the same traveler at all. He is very laid
Oh.
back. Like, he would rather just sit. I mean, he's in the Bahamas. He wants to sit at the pool or sit at the beach and maybe
Mm.
snorkel a little bit and lay out. And I'm like, okay, there are top 10 things to do in the Bahamas. Check one, two, three, four, and so that's the kind of explorer that I am. And we learned right away that we were very different. But luckily, he's a kind of go with the flow guy, and he's okay. He's now molded a little bit more to my go, go, go. So he knows that when we travel, and I have 4 kids. When we travel, it is go time. So we are up and at 'em, and we go from morning till night. I I'm kind of the impression that, like, I never know if I'm going to come back to that place again. And so if I'm
Mm.
going to go there, I want to feel like I explored as much of it as I could. Now, there is
Mm.
something to be said about slowing down in those places and taking moments to really soak it in, and I try to balance that. But I also want to feel like when I come home, it's not like I didn't ever leave my resort, or I
Mm.
didn't,
Hmm.
I don't like that feeling, because another kind of traveler I am, besides being go, 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 is that I also am kind of when I've been to that place, I'd like to try someplace new.
Mm.
So I'm not someone who like goes back to the same place every time. There is a place in Oregon that I go that we have a vacation home that's kind of like home to me that I will go back, and that's kind of the place I'll go all the time. But as far as like if I'm planning travel for my year, it's going to be somewhere I haven't been. So, because to me, I just want to see more and I want to meet more people and I want to have more experiences with seeing other places. So, to me, because I'm not someone who's like, I'll come back here next year, since I know that that's not my nature, I just like to just pack it in.
Mm.
So,
I resonate with that so much. Just these things you're saying, I'm like, yep. Like,
right.
go to the new places, and like, when am I gonna get a chance to see this again? And then I married someone just recently who is like, hold on, this is supposed to be vacation.
Right.
Can we chill a little bit?
Right. When my husband and I went to Kauai one time, this was like a few trips in, and I had morning and afternoon activities planned each day of our week. I was like, we will be hiking, we will be kayaking, we will be like all these different things just to explore the entire island. And he's like, I do not see pool time. Where is pool time? And I was like, that is Wednesday afternoon. From 2 to 5, we have pool time. And he was like, no, I need more pool time than 2 to 5 on Wednesday afternoon. I'm just like, he just put his foot down.
Yeah, we're new, and so we're kind of still learning the like, what does that balance look like, and how do we, because I come back from vacations just exhausted
Right.
sometimes, and I'm learning like, oh, it's kind of nice when you come home and you had rest on a vacation.
Yes.
But that's pretty foreign to me, and so he's been slowing me down in a really lovely way, and then I've been like, okay, but there are these things I want to go see. And so it's interesting as we're like, we're trying to figure out that balance. So it's really funny to hear that.
Yes, yeah. I've been married 19 years now, and we're still trying to find that balance. So good luck.
All right. Last of the introductory questions is, what is your number one travel tip?
So I've been thinking about this because there's so many. So I'm like I have lots of travel tips, but I would say the biggest travel tip to me is to be open-minded to doing something out of your comfort zone. If you're going to travel and you're leaving your comfort zone, you're leaving your home and all that you know, and you're going somewhere that's different, that is, you are stepping out of your comfort zone a little bit by doing that, or a lot bit, depending on the nature of someone. But I always like for people to try something, whether it's a dish that they wouldn't have tried while they were there, or an experience that they may not have wanted to do prior, or something that that they'll look back. It's a memory that they have that will never go away. I always feel like when you try something new, you usually don't regret trying it, but you may regret not trying it. I guess that might just be part of my nature. But so even when I'm advising people in travel, even just trying to help them maybe do something that might be a little bit different than what they would normally do. I just think it helps expand the experience that you have when you travel, when you do something, even if it's like, even being out of your comfort zone may be like, I don't know if I want to talk to that waiter, but I'm just going to strike up a conversation, and maybe you'll like learn something about that person, or you're in a place and you're like when I was just in Ireland, I am not a big fan of lamb, but you have to, I mean, if you go to Ireland, you must eat lamb stew. You must. It's out of my comfort zone because I don't like the taste of it, and I had it and I still didn't like the taste of it. But I was in a pub and I was eating lamb stew in the oldest pub in Ireland, and it felt nice. Like it was like it was an experience. So even though it wasn't like the best meal I'd ever had, it was kind of the experience of being there.
I think that's such a good point, though, because so I'm a foodie, and I think my theory with foods, when people say they don't like something, is I always say, well, try the best version of it. And if you don't like the best version of it, then you actually don't like it.
Right.
But maybe you've only had mediocre versions. Like maybe you hadn't had lamb cooked particularly well, and then you try a lamb stew in Ireland and you're like, oh my gosh, I love it. And
Right.
so, or maybe you just don't like lamb, and that's fine too. And
Yeah.
also, it's not a big deal if you have a meal that you end up not liking. Like,
Right.
and it's not, there's no major like terrible implications of that in your life.
Right.
If you have a meal that you're like, oh, I didn't really enjoy that, but it's so fun to try new things and new places. So
Right.
I
And
love
then when
that.
you've tried it, you can have an opinion on it. Like if you don't
Yes.
try things, you can't really have an opinion. Like when my kids are like, I don't like that. I'm like, you haven't even tried it. So you can't
Mm,
have an opinion on it if you haven't tried it. And so
mm,
it's just like a part of becoming a well-rounded person that I feel like when you travel, you become more well-rounded when you allow yourself to experience things that you wouldn't normally. And then you can have an opinion
mm.
about something.
I love that. And then there's times where you learn you love something and you're like, who knew? I didn't know that
Right.
I'd be into this thing.
Right.
Turns out I am. So
Right. Absolutely.
I love that.
That's
That's
great.
good advice.
All right. So we're going to launch into you telling us about being a travel advisor. So I think what would be interesting would be to start by telling us, how did you get into travel advising in the first place? You already kind of mentioned
Yeah.
you kind of did some travel planning on your own
Right.
anyway, but what led you to travel advising?
Yeah, I'm a born travel planner. So it actually started when I was a kid. So like I said, my dad loves to travel. So we would go on big trips. When I say big trips, I was born in late 70s. So our trips were like 80s road trips in the station wagon with the wood siding on the back. You throw your no
Yep.
seatbelt, you're just thrown in there, and we'd go for road trips. So we'd go to Yellowstone and we'd go on, it was back in those days when like travel was like air travel was much less affordable for families to do. So we were just, kind
Mhm.
of exploring the United States. And I was the map girl. So not my mom, and I'm the third of four. So I was like the youngest. And my dad would give me the map and he'd be like, before GPS and all that stuff, and I would take the map out and I would like use the little kilometer thing at the bottom and be like, okay, the next town we're hitting is 16 miles away, Dad. We can stop for gas there. And so I became the map, and I
Aw.
love maps. I still love maps. In my office that I have in my house, I have this huge school map because I'm also a former teacher, like an old school pull down map of the
Oh, yeah,
world. And
yeah, yeah.
I look at it all the time because I love maps. And it started with
Mm.
my dad getting into the station wagon with our map open and me telling him where to go. And so I kind of became even a trip planner in my like 8, 9 year old self, like, okay, Dad, if we don't have to stop for 60 miles and we can wait for gas there or potty stops there, whatever. So I feel like it's always been in my blood. And then my dad, just growing up, I really admire my dad. I love my dad and very much like my dad. And so he planned this big trip my senior year to Europe, where we went for a month traveling around Europe. He probably worked on that itinerary for 8 months, no joke. And
Wow.
Aw.
trains and planes, and just we went through 10 different countries in a month and just explored as a family, and it
Nice.
was amazing. And I really just gained to love traveling, and I watched my dad plan it. And so then as I became I actually, when I was 8 years old, I got perms. Back in the day when people got perms. Next to the perm shop was a travel agency, and I told my mom when I was like 11. I guess I was 11. I told her, I want to be a travel agent, and my mom said, you
Hmm.
need to go to college and you need to get a real job, because that is not like, that was kind of what she said. She feels bad about it now. But anyway, so I went to college and I got a job and I became a teacher, and I absolutely love teaching. I mean, I was an
Mm.
elementary school teacher, and then I have been a substitute teacher in my kids' school so I could be part-time. And anyway, and
Nice.
and I was just kind of at a crossroads where I was like, I love teaching, but I also love travel. And informally, I had been planning friends travel and my own travel and my extended family's travel for years, where they'd be like, we're going to go to wherever. I'm like, let me plan it. And they're like, why would you do that? I'm like, I love it, just let me plan it. And they're like, well, okay. I mean, that's a lot of work. I'm like, I know. Just, I'll pace it out for you. I just loved it. It's like literally a passion of mine. So I just decided, I was like 40, and I'm like, maybe it was a midlife crisis or something. And I'm like, you know what I want to do? I want to go back to what I said I wanted to do when I was 11, which was to plan travel. Like, and I knew I was good at it because I had been doing it for many years, and I had planned really successful international trips for multi-generational families, and they had been successful and it had been smooth running and everything. So I knew I was good at it. So I just decided to put my feelers out to some local agencies, and I said, I'm a teacher. I I've been informally planning travel forever, and I want to be a travel advisor and plan people's trips. And she immediately was like, okay, there's a lot of people who love to travel but don't make really good travel advisors. I'm like, no, 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 no. I actually love the detail of planning the trip. Like, I like to travel too, but like actually planning it, I find so much joy because it's like putting little pieces of puzzles together. And it's like you put the puzzle, you finally put the final piece, and you're like, I got it, you know? And so it's like, it's so invigorating. I love it. So that's the long story short. So I kind of had a midlife crisis. I switched over, and I have not looked back. I absolutely love it. And I'm a people person. So I live vicariously through every client. When they're on a trip, I know exactly where they are. I know what they're doing, like, generally. And so I'm like, okay, they're right now. I like planned a trip. For one of my favorite trips that I've planned was this lady last summer, who was a client of mine prior. She's like, hey, I decided I'm taking my daughter to the World Cup. We're going to France, and we want to go to the World Cup. And the World Cup was just starting. So it was like the beginning of June. And she's like, we want to go in like 3 weeks. And I was like, oh! So like quickly put this plan together. And I had to like find out the World Cup, playoff, and like, well, if the US wins there, then they'll be in this location in France, because they were playing in many, many different locations in France.
Yeah.
So I had to be like, okay, if they win this, then I need to get them to this. I need to get them on this train here to this one. And then by the semifinals, they need to be down in Lyon. And so I had to plan this intricate trip. And then the entire time they were gone, I was like checking my Facebook notices from her every day to be like, oh, where are they? Oh, like I live vicariously through my clients when they're traveling, and I get to see their pictures. I'm like, oh, like, I can't even tell you. It makes me so happy. It's like a mother, like watching her child leave the nest almost. Like, I don't know how to describe it. But so anyway, that was a really long answer.
It's a great answer, though.
Oh, I love that. Oh, how fun. Man, and now I want to live vicariously through you and your job.
Right. The one question I got some resistance from my family, not from my husband, because he's known I've wanted to do this forever, and he's super supportive. But my family was like travel advisors, they like left in the 90s. Like, once the internet came around, like, there aren't travel advisors anymore. And I remember my brother being like, well, people use travel advisors. And I'm like, actually, now more than ever, people need to be able to sift through the minutia of the internet. Just because the internet has so much access, sometimes it's overwhelming to people.
Yeah.
To know, like, I want to go to Morocco, but I don't know where to start, or like just safety issues. Like, this looks good, but I don't know if that's necessarily safe, or if that's a good pacing, or if that's, whatever. So I've been super busy because people don't have the time to plan big intricate trips. Sometimes they're like, I just don't have 30 hours to sit and dedicate to this. So that's been that's kind of the number one question I get from people is like, oh, you're still around? Like, yes.
Well, and what is that? Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what that looks like now, in 2020. Is it you always plan every detail for everybody, or is it a lot of in between? Because you're an advisor, so I'm assuming that you advise on a lot of different levels. So what does that look like for you?
It's like well, first of all, it's definitely an interview process. So the
Mm.
the beginning, when I'm talking with someone about what kind of trip they want, I'm doing really an interview of sorts. I need to kind of find out what kind of traveler they are. Are they
Yeah.
a go 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 traveler, or are they I just want to take things, I want to slow it down, right? Or are they more adventurous, or do they want to be with a group? Do they want to be on their own? Do they want to like, are they way into history and museums, or are they more people who want to wander the streets? Are they people that like a lot of structure to their day, or are they people who want to just kind of like get there and have the day to explore and kind of go at their own pace? So when I plan and put travel together for people, it's very tailored to what kind of trip they want, because in the end I want to give them something that when they come back they're like, nailed it, that was just what I was looking for. And if I haven't nailed it, then that's a failure to me on my part as the advisor, is that I'm trying to tailor a trip to the type of traveler they are.
I love that. Have you noticed sometimes when you're interviewing people that it turns out that they don't really know themselves or actually know what
Oh,
their travel style is?
yes, absolutely. Yes, yes. Yeah,
Hmm.
a lot of that. Or they're just not really familiar with where they're going, and so they don't know what they want to see. Like
Mm.
maybe they just like they've always wanted to go to Italy, but they don't know where they want to go in Italy, or
Yeah.
or what how much they want to see. Like, so for those type of people who don't really know, then I just use my expertise to try to tempo a kind of flavored experience for them that kind of has a little bit of everything.
Mm.
So, because there are people that really don't either travel a lot or know how they travel. And so then you kind of have to, I always say we go through versions of proposals, like where I put a proposal together. Then there's like a first draft where we're
Mm.
working on it and like, okay, well, I don't know if I really like that. So let's pull that out. And, so we're tweaking it and tweaking it until it gets to a point where they feel like, that's it. I like this. So,
Mm.
yeah.
So for clients who really want that open day and they don't want things decided, what does an itinerary look like for them? Do you include a lot of recommendations, like, hey, if you feel like this, here are these options for you? Or because I think we talk to a lot of people who are not planners, like we're both planners,
Right.
and then I think there's times when we wonder, like, but aren't you going to miss out? Like, what if the museum's not open on Monday, and or like
Right,
different things
right.
like that? So what does that look like for you, planning for someone who's not doesn't want something super planned?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's actually pretty easy. It's easier to plan that kind of trip
Mm,
where they just really want the bones. I mean, some people
mm-hmm.
just want, like I say, kind of the bones. Like, I'll pace it for them. I'll get them the places they need to be, and then they kind of want to explore on their own. And then I work, so I'm not an expert in the entire world. I do not know every country backwards and forwards. I wish I did, but I don't. And so that's why I have suppliers that I have that live in those countries that help me. Like, if I haven't been to that place, then I rely on my suppliers to help me know, like, okay, when they're in Bergen for 3 days, what are they gonna do in Bergen? Like, what are some things, if they don't want it totally structured, here are 5 things that you might not wanna miss while you're there, and give them that. And also I provide a digital itinerary, and we're now in, the 21st century. So now, instead of having like a paper, itinerary that you turn, it's all on your phone. And so they get like an itinerary that has recommendations of things they can do. It even has links to, like, if they decide they're like, I do want to take a tour of the museum, I'll have a link where they can directly buy tickets to that museum,
Nice.
just to have, like, directly from their phone. So the itinerary is all in their phone, their flight information is in their phone, their day-to-day, their confirmations are in their phone, and it's all in this, like, pretty nice little itinerary that looks pretty, and stuff like that. So there's always suggestions for people who like to have open
Mm,
open days, for sure.
nice.
So
That's
when
very
you're
cool.
planning these trips, I'm sure that as a travel advisor, you have extra special resources that you can access. Like you said, you have suppliers who live in those countries that you can
Right.
contact. But do you also ever use like TripAdvisor or just the internet as well? And if so, what do you think
Absolutely.
of those resources?
Absolutely. 1000%. I use TripAdvisor. Like I mean, who does not use TripAdvisor? If you're not using TripAdvisor, even as a agent, like it's good to get feedback not only from my supplier, but from the general public on something.
Mm.
And that's the beauty of TripAdvisor, because it's the everyday man writing a a review about something. Even I do that for restaurants that I recommend. I'm always looking at reviews in various places. And I always say, like, for people who love to plan travel, they should plan their own travel. I don't necessarily feel like every single human being needs a travel advisor,
Hmm.
because some people love to plan their own travel and love the minutia of the planning, right? And for those people, I say, like, I'm not for you. Like, if you love that stuff, that's you should be doing that. Just like people who love to, like, do their own taxes. Like they want to do their own taxes. I'm like, I don't want to do my own taxes. I want someone else to do my taxes. So yeah. So for those people who love to do that kind of that dig in search, I'm like, good on you. Like, go do that, and you plan the best personal travel for yourself. But I absolutely research and use the internet for all kind. I mean, yes, I am using the internet plus my suppliers at all times.
Yeah. What changed for you when you went from you just planning your own trips to then being a travel advisor and planning other people's trips, as far as what you're looking at and how you plan? Did anything shift in the way you look at travel and planning trips?
Yes, absolutely. Um, so when I'm in charge of someone else's trip, there's far more pressure because, I'm here in Washington State and they're across the globe somewhere else. So I need to make sure that everything's running as smoothly as possible. That's what they pay me for, right? So that they don't have to think about those parts. So I really have to think about every section of it. Like, okay, if they're going to catch the train, it's not like if I were maybe going on the trip, maybe I wouldn't have my train ticket booked prior. I might, like, I'll just wake up and get the ticket and we'll go to the train station and see what train. Unless they're the type that wants that, which I'd say most people aren't, when they're headed to a new country, they don't necessarily want to be like, yeah, and just to go find the train station. Like, that's my job. So, like,
Yeah.
my job is to make sure that they get to the train station. Some people are fine getting themselves there, and some people are like, I want to be picked up at my hotel, and I want to be taken to the train station, and I want my train ticket in my hand, and I want it to be absolutely seamless. And so when I'm planning my own travel, I can be a little bit looser in my own planning, but when I'm planning someone else's trip, it's got to just run smoothly. Like, that's what they expect. That's what I expect of myself. So there's a lot more pressure. Like, when I'm talking about thinking about everyone where they are in each day, it's joy, but it's also terror. Like, what if I get, one of the things I offer is that I consider myself a concierge of sorts. Like, if they have a problem on their trip, the first person they are going to text is me. And I'm the one who takes care of it. Like, even the lady who I did the trip to the World Cup, she texted me and said, you know what? We actually decided we don't want to go to our next destination. We'd like to stay here for another night. Can you fix that? So she can go off and enjoy the day, and I'm going to work on changing the reservation.
Wow.
That's
So
nice.
so there's just things like that where think plans change, and then I am there to kind of fix it for them. So I'm kind of like the hands-on person while they're traveling. If there's any problems, I'm the one taking care of it. If they got there, like, there was one, I remember I had my cute little honeymoon couple, and they got to the place where they were supposed to have reservations, and there were no reservations. And so
Oh,
I was
no.
like, oh no. And they were able to get them in, and then I fought to get their money back because they were supposed to have had reservations and had paid for it, but they didn't. So anyway, I'm like working on the back end of that, and they just get to go enjoy the dinner. I was,
Nice.
so that's kind of what I'm doing as well while they're on the trip, is like smoothing out anything or changing anything mid travel for them.
I love that. Oh, that's awesome.
So I know that there are trends that tend to happen in
Yes.
travel. I know several years ago, for example, Iceland started marketing pretty heavily,
Right.
both with their flights and just advertising, and it became this amazing place that everybody wanted to go.
Right.
What trends have you seen in the past, and maybe what trends do you think are maybe up and coming, or maybe they had sort of started and then of course COVID has changed
Right,
everything?
right.
Because
Yes.
that's our current trend is COVID-19 and nobody's
Right.
traveling.
Yes, it's like a bomb just dropped on the United States, the whole world, and it was like,
Yeah.
and we're in pause.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yes, yeah, absolutely. Can we just stop a moment and take a moment and think that and say that Iceland's tourism department was brilliant,
Oh my
with their
gosh,
free
yes.
stopovers. Years ago, I'm like, they need some sort of whatever tourism medal for marketing their country so well that people, 10 years ago, people are like, Iceland, what? Iceland? And it has
Yeah.
become so hot. I mean, it is now like
Yep.
a hot spot for people that want to go to Europe. I mean, Iceland is typically
Yep.
in a lot of itineraries that I do. So that's I give hats off to Iceland for that. I would say Portugal has become quite hot. That's been kind of like a sleeper country in Europe, I feel like. And just in the past couple of years, I feel like people have really started to love the idea of going to Portugal, which is so fun. I love these kind of you feel like Europe's kind of all been explored, but Portugal, I feel like, is one of those little countries on the side of Spain that a lot of people didn't pay any attention to. And the people that have gone to Portugal, I have not been there myself, but I have planned a lot of trips to Portugal. Morocco has really, really opened up, and that's also been a big spot. The top of Africa. You can say you've been to the African continent, and even on a day trip from Spain. I've just booked for a family that wanted to go to Morocco just for the day. And you can even just pop over from Spain over to Morocco if you just want to go over for the day. So Morocco has been big. The Galapagos Islands are just now just like exploding. So Ecuador is the stop into the Galapagos Islands. So that's been pretty big. And then I would say in Asia, I've done a lot of Bali and Thailand. Thailand's kind of been big for a little while, but now some of the up and coming is more like Vietnam. Not even up and coming. I wouldn't even say that's up and coming, but it's kind of like a new region of Asia that I feel like people are tapping into because it also is astronomically beautiful. And people don't think, I don't know, I just think people think Vietnam and they think the war, and I don't know if they think past that, but there's so much beauty in Vietnam as well. So I would say those are some spots that I feel like are kind of hot right now.
That's so interesting. We've covered all of those on our podcast. And it's funny because I think for me, several of those locations, I was just like, oh, I would have never thought that I'd want to visit there particularly. I mean, I want to go everywhere, but they were top of my list. And now I'm like, oh, Vietnam. We had someone come and talk about it and we saw her pictures and it was like, oh my gosh, I have to go there. This is gorgeous. And so it's so interesting as different countries get more exposure.
Yes.
It's like, oh yeah, a lot of the world is amazing and gorgeous and unique in its own way. And so yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I will say one other spot that's hot, and it's become hot in the past few years, is Croatia. And I'm sure I don't know if you've had have you been there?
Yes, that's my part of the world. Croatia, Slovenia.
Right. I know that just popped into my head, but I'm like, love those. That's such a beautiful country, and I love that there's it's a double-edged sword when those places become hot, right? Because but it does boost their economies, which could use it, and provides jobs and services for those people, and that's great. I mean, it is a double-edged sword because it comes with tourism and busyness and a change, a little bit of culture sometimes, but but it also helps you be able to again meet people. Like when I went to Montenegro and met met this our tour guide for the day, and I just loved talking to her. I'm like, this little
Mm,
country of Montenegro, and she's lived
yeah.
her whole life in Montenegro, and I got to hear all about the kind of the wars that have been in that region and how that affected her
Hmm.
family. And I'm like, I would have never known if I hadn't been to
Mm,
Montenegro and talked to this lady. It just
mm,
opens the world to understanding people and stuff so much more. I love it.
Yeah. I
mm.
actually, this last weekend, I just did a video call with a friend of mine who lives in Split in Croatia.
Oh,
And he was talking about how, because they're, reopening things from the
Mm,
shutdown with COVID and stuff. But he was talking about how it's because their main business in Split is tourism. And
absolutely.
so with people not traveling at all, it's
wow.
having a major impact on their city and what
Mm,
people are prepared for and not prepared for, because they plan on their summer, extended summer,
Right.
whatever, like May, I think probably through maybe early to mid September, depending
Yes.
on, what's going on. They have the main part of their income for the entire year, and
Yes.
that's
mm,
really been significantly shut down. So yeah,
wow.
it's a big factor.
Right.
Mm,
And being in the travel business and watching these suppliers that I know struggle around the world is just heartbreaking. It is just
Yeah.
absolutely
mm,
heartbreaking. I mean, yeah, I mean we have like first world problems, but there are really people around the world who like live and die by tourism, literally,
Mm-hmm.
like
mm,
Mm-hmm.
cannot feed their family. So, yeah, it's a struggle for sure.
mm. Wow. So let's talk a little bit more about COVID. We're recording in May, and this episode isn't
Ugh.
coming out till September. So it's kind of interesting, like, to think about a couple months ago when it like seemed like no big deal, and just the timeline on this. I think for me and a lot of us is significantly different from what we thought it might be. Um, so I mean, obviously we know it's impacted travel in a huge way, but like, how have you seen it, or like, what were things that surprised you? Just how have any stories you have of ways that you've seen it just really be impacted?
Right. Well, I mean, it like I don't think any of us realized the gravity to which it would stop human function. I mean,
Mm.
there really hasn't been anything that in my lifetime that has shut the world down in any fashion like this. I mean, so when 9/11 hit, that was a kind of a devastating blow to the travel industry. But this pandemic it doesn't can't like 9/11 can't even
Mm,
touch what the pandemic has done to the travel industry.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been travel businesses that have completely gone under, bankrupt, like suppliers that I use that are now completely out of business and will not be
mm,
reopening. I would say that's the exception, not the rule, luckily, because I do like the beauty of travel is that once it's in your blood, it's hard to get out. So
mm,
even though we've had this pandemic and people are a little bit scared to travel, and it will come back. Like I
mm-hmm.
am absolutely sure that people's vacations. I mean, I have been the bearer of bad news for the past 3 months, and
Oh,
it's stinky to have to be call and be like, and your flight's canceled, and your country has shut its borders, and you're not going. I mean, that's just where people have saved up or had dreams for years of going to these places, and they don't get to
Yeah.
go, and it's devastating. But I just know that in the end, it's not going to stop people from traveling. I'm right now. I mean, I'm booking into 2021. 2021 feels pretty safe
mm,
for people, and so we've pretty much shifting most of their trips over from 2020 into 2021.
mm,
But I mean, just even the travel industry has reeled so much. Like within the industry, the rules change almost daily. I mean, when it was first
Yeah.
mm,
coming out, the airlines were like, "Well, we'll give you, we'll let you change for free, and you can use your ticket by the end of the year." And you had till December 31st to use your ticket, and people were like, well, I can't go to Spain in November. I wasn't planning on that. And then as it got more severe, then it was like, well, now you can use your voucher for up to 2 years. So like the policies have changed, and things like that have just changed over the past, just like they literally change daily. I mean, so that's been hard to keep up with, just to try to keep up with all of that just within the travel industry of, the changing, it's unknown and unprecedented. And so everyone's kind of trying to figure out how to make travel, um, go forward. So I would say that the one thing that the travel industry is probably most concerned about is consumer confidence. Really, like, I think people, even when borders open, there will be some people who are like gangbusters, like, yes, get me out of
Yep.
here, right?
Yep.
And then, but I would say there'll be a lot of people that are just a little gun shy, kind of like we're a little bit gun shy when we go to the store, and we're, got to keep our distance. And I think that will even just translate into travel a little bit. It will be like a slower, it's not like the gates are going to open to the world and everyone's going to just pour out. I think there'll be a bit of a trickle out, and so I think it will take the travel industry a little bit longer than we thought it was going to take. We just kind of thought, I think, like, oh well, it will be a month and we'll be back,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
and now it's like months later where we're like, well, no one's going anywhere in April, no one's going anywhere in May or June or July, and so I would say that domestic travel, I mean, I know this is just timely for May, but, I say this is the summer. I'm telling most people, this is the summer to explore America. So,
Yeah.
like, I mean, like, I have 4 kids and everything has been pulled out from their summer camps, and everything has been wiped clean. And I told my kids, I'm like, this is the year where we can explore our own state. So we had a big trip planned back east this in August, actually, and now Broadway was shut down, and so now we're rethinking our plans to go back east, because I don't know if a lot of the sites will be open. So I said, hey guys, plan B is we are going to go explore, parts of Washington state that I have not shown you, which is a travesty as a mother to be like, this state is so beautiful and there are so many
Yeah.
wonderful places to see, and we're just going to do that this year, and that's what our summer is going to look like. So it's
That's
just
a
kind of
great
pivoting and
idea.
just taking
Love that.
going, like, you can still explore, but explore closer to home. And I don't even mean that you have to stay within your state. I think you could travel with outside of your state, or domestic travel, I think obviously is going to come back much quicker than international travel, because international travel has to depend on how comfortable other countries are, not only us opening our borders, but them wanting to open their borders to us
Yep.
is a whole different question. So so yeah, I say this is the summer of like exploring the United States.
That's interesting, because you started talking about how you got interested in travel with the road trips.
Yeah.
And Cheryl and I grew up in the 80s as well, in the early 90s, and it was a similar thing for me. Like, the vacations for me growing up were driving down to the Bay Area in California where my grandparents lived.
Yes.
Right. And we take 2 days to drive down. We take 2 days to drive back. We didn't do big major trips and things. And I think it was probably because, we couldn't afford much more than that. I wonder if we will see a resurgence of the US road trip because of
Yes.
this, at least to some extent, which could be
And
cool.
I think it's so awesome. I told my kids, we sat around the table last night. I'm like, you guys, plan B. I already like booked everything, and they weren't very excited, because the thought of going to New York City and Washington D.C. and seeing all the monuments was much more exciting than going to waterfalls and on hikes and things like that for them. At least they're teenagers, complainy teenagers. But I know that when we get there and experience those places within our own state or within our own country, you're again, I think travel is really about building memories. And I always say your life is just made up of a bunch of memories. Like, if that's what your life is, it's just a string of memories. So if you can put some meaningful memories, no matter if it's in your own state or a halfway across the world, but you're spending time with the people that you love, exploring and getting to know each other better because you've pushed away work, you've pushed away school, and you can really focus on each other and focus on the area you're in. Those memories are the memories that you have forever. Like the memory I have of me holding the map in our Woody Woodpecker wagon, like
Yeah.
driving around. They're not anything spectacular, but they're memories together and they're memories exploring.
I love that. And I think it's interesting to think about your home as a destination. I think that, we can all take where we live for granted sometimes, but like I have a new coworker. She was on this podcast actually a bit ago who's not from the US even, and she and her husband like chose the Seattle area because they were like, Washington's so gorgeous. Like that's where we want to live, and we want to hike and experience outdoors and everything. And so like to them this was like their choice of like, this is where we want to be and like experience. And it's like, I love that, just thinking about like what destinations are in your hometown, that like other people come from far and wide to visit, that you could, just go and take a day trip and explore and
Right.
still kind of experience travel, and get that like scratch that itch a little bit as well.
Yeah,
So
right, right.
yeah.
And be a tourist in your own state. And I don't think there has to be anything wrong with that. Like, sometimes my kids will ho hum about the 10 millionth time we've gone down to Pike Place Market with a friend down to Seattle. But there's so much more to any state or to Washington State, but in any state besides like the big city. So our week-long trip
Yeah.
that we're taking is to the Olympic National Forest. I'm like, how
Oh,
have I never
beautiful.
taken my own family to the one rainforest? The only rainforest in the continental United States is in
Mm-hmm.
Washington State. And my
Yep.
kids have been born and raised here, and we've never been. I mean, I've taken them to Switzerland. I've taken them to Costa Rica. I've taken them to Mexico. I've taken them all these places around the world, and there is so much beauty just even within our own state. And I know that goes out to many people in many different states, but there's beauty to be had in each state, and
Mm-hmm.
and exploring that, and understanding that you can make memories and have fun, and build relationships with people, and you don't have to travel that far, and it doesn't have to be that expensive for you to be able to make those memories.
I love that.
I think it's a
That's
great
wonderful.
point that while, yes, there are things that we love to see in whatever the places that we go to, whether that's in our own state or in our own country or abroad, it really is about those shared experiences that we have with the people that we care about. And to some extent, it may not matter as much where it is that we're going, and it might matter more who we're doing it with. That's a really interesting insight
Absolutely.
about travel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So choose your travel partners wisely. Also.
That is very good advice.
Have you ever advised anyone that you could sense just based on the interview that they would not travel well together?
No. No, I have sat down with couples where it would be like sitting down with myself and my husband, where you're like, wow, wow, we're gonna have to bridge two different type of travel styles together, where we're gonna do some fun and we're gonna do some relaxing, and we gotta intermix, kind of sprinkle both of those type of things in into the travel for sure. So I've definitely met people, but I am one of those with my own husband. So I'm like, okay, it doesn't necessarily mean divorce is imminent. It just means that you've got different styles, and that's okay. We can work with that. Compromise is good.
Yes.
Oh, I love that. Okay, I have a non-COVID question. Because as much as we all love talking about it,
Right.
So, I'm curious, what are some things you've seen in the years of planning, or even hearing from your clients, that are just like the biggest ripoffs, or like just not worth the money? That you're like, save your money,
Oh,
don't do this thing.
that's so awesome, because actually I was like, what would that be? Because I feel like most everyone's been like, yeah, that was fantastic. But I just sent a client in February, right before all of this happened. They got this beautiful trip to New York City. They loved it, every second of it. But I sent them, I'm gonna get people telling me that I shouldn't say this, but the what is it called? Why am I forgetting? So you can go up to the top of, I booked their reservation for this. You sit and it's the rotating
Like a restaurant?
restaurant on top of the Marriott in Times Square. And they were like, absolutely not worth it. Like you think in your head, you're like, oh, Times Square, sit above Times Square and eat and, rotate around the entire square. And you've got, just, it sounds better than it was. Like the experience wasn't good. The food wasn't good. They're like, every other part was really great. That was not worth it. It was like just overhyped a bit. And so that's been my latest one. That's like the one that I can think of a place where they're like, boo, and I'm like, note. I keep all my notes. Like after everyone comes home from their trip, I try to get feedback from them as to what they liked and what they didn't like and things like that. So I keep notes so that I'm well informed for the next client that wants to go to that area. So
I love that. Well, I think Times Square is also just like overhyped. So I mean
Right.
that might be fitting that the restaurant above it
Right.
matches that.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's like a little like cliche, I guess, yeah. And it fit the bill. It was exactly as cliche and cheesy and underwhelming as it sounded. So yes.
Oh man. Well, thank you so much for sharing about your experiences as a travel advisor. We just loved hearing about it. We have a couple questions for you before we move on to our final segment. Normally, we ask our guests if they could take us to just one thing on their trip, what would it be and why? But we didn't talk about a trip.
I could tell you somewhere where I love to send clients that they may not know in Costa Rica.
Yes.
Okay. So I love Costa Rica. I always say like I love there's so much to love about Costa Rica. But there's there's a couple places. So there's a waterfall called La Cortez Waterfall. I think that's the name of it. But it is just a beautiful waterfall that you can easily pass on the road. Like if you're flying into Liberia Airport, which is a lot of people fly into Guanacaste in Liberia, and then you might be headed to Arenal, or you might be headed down to Guanacaste, one of the beach regions in Costa Rica. But there's just like off to the side of the road, there's a little sign that says La Cortez Waterfall, and you might be like, oh, whatever. Don't pass it. Don't pass it. Must stop. You get out and park there, and you just hike down a little bit, go in your swimsuit, and it is just a beautiful waterfall that you can actually enter. Like it's not a raging river where you're gonna get pummeled and you can't swim. Like it's a very family friendly, kind of sandy, beachy waterfall, and it's pretty wide, but you can go under it. It's just like not all waterfalls are created equal. Some are just there for the beauty. And then some are a little bit more practical, where you can like walk in and swim underneath the waterfall. And it's just one of those really awesome places. And then also in Costa Rica, there's this town called Philadelphia, which is so ironic that there's a little town in Costa Rica called Philadelphia. And it starts, instead of with a PH, it starts with an F. Just, it's spelled Philadelphia, but it starts with an F. And in the middle of their town, just really random, I send my clients, I'm like, if you're going through, you have to stop at they have just like a little square, like a park, I guess you'd say, just kind of in the middle of the small town. And in the middle of the small town, in this park, is covered with huge iguanas. Huge. I mean, like you couldn't pick one up. They're so big. Like they live in the trees. They
Really?
walk down they just hang out. You could just be sitting on the park bench in the park, and there would be this ginormous like iguana that would just walk past you, and they're just climbing in the trees, and they're walking around like they own the place, because they own the park. And it's just like one of those places. It's not a zoo. It's not it's just, you only need to stop for 10 minutes and be like, I can't believe I see giant iguanas just walking through the parks of this little town. And it's just fun, and they're there all the time. It's not like you would have a season where you wouldn't see them, but it's just a kind of like off the beaten path,
so fun.
kind of like, wow, okay, giant iguanas just sitting in the park. It's fun.
Wow, that sounds awesome. Those are
Yeah.
great. Those are great ones. And this question is also it's kind of a bit of a bummer right now. So it's either what's your next trip or what do you wish your next trip could be?
Okay. So my next trip was back east, which is going to get rescheduled. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And again, my next trip is just going to be a nice local explore our state trip, which I wouldn't have done
Nice.
anytime other than COVID because I would have been wildly thinking of all the other amazing places I could go outside of my own state. So I'm actually kind of excited for that. But actually, I
Nice.
have my next vacation is a cruise in December, which crossing fingers in December that it will all be okay. And I actually would like to go on the cruise. Like if it is sailing, I am going. That's
Mm.
how I am. And my family's going. I'm taking with my family, and we're just doing a Caribbean cruise in the middle of December to leave the rainy Seattle. We do a lot
Nice.
of different kinds of travel in our family, but one favorite is just the easy, chilled out cruising. So that's actually my next trip is in December. So
Oh,
fingers
fun.
crossed that they're up and moving, and I actually would love to go on a cruise and be able to show people that I can come back alive because unfortunately they've gotten a bad rap, and I feel bad for the
Mm.
cruising industry. So
Yeah.
Mm. Oh man. Well, hopefully that will work out. And
yeah.
last question, do you have any travel questions for us?
Um what are your favorite, like, so because I'm into memories and I feel like travel creates lasting memories that you tie together in a string of your life, what's like been an iconic travel memory that you have had that like really resonates and is like sunk deep into your psyche and memory, each of you?
Mm,
That's a very good question.
it's a
I thought you
deep
were going to ask us
travel
our favorite
memory.
country, and I was going to say, like, oh, we've been asked that before on this podcast.
Like
It doesn't
a
even have to
deep.
be like mine. It was like in the car with
Yeah.
my Woody wagon and my map. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
even have to
Yeah.
be just like a travel memory. It doesn't even have to be a
Yeah.
place.
Oh, man.
Well, I think this is not really a specific location or place or thing, but it is something that when you mentioned, when you first started thinking about travel and what that looked like for you, I went back to the first international trip that I did, which was actually to Ecuador when I was a freshman in high school. And then that made me think of something that I always find interesting about travel, and that trip was the first time that it occurred to me in the first place, which is I picture the way something is going to look and the way it's going to be. And then I get there and it's different, right? It's always different than what I expect. And while on one level with travel, it makes sense, right? You can, even now with the internet, you can look at pictures and have an idea of what things might look like, but then you get in front of it and the experience is different. But I think that extends to more than just travel. And so one of the things that I think travel has impacted me with on a larger scale is not just what I expect, but even in a much more nebulous way, beyond just countries, just the future. If I'm thinking about the way something will be, recognizing that even if I can't picture what that will be, that doesn't mean the thing can't be, or that it won't be good, or that it won't be enjoyable, because it's going to be different than whatever I can think that it might be now. I don't know if that makes any sense whatsoever.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's like a good life lesson to be
Yeah.
able to
Mm.
to like to have like an idea of what something is and then experience it, and even if it's different than what you thought, it can still be great,
Yeah.
even with like a schema change. Just like like if you were to picture a certain person to be a certain way and then you meet them and they're different, it's not that they're not necessarily bad or good, they're just different. And I think it
Mhm.
like shapes who we are. So I agree
Mm.
with that. Like even with travel, when you go to those places and it may be different than what you thought, or it may be nailed right, and it could be better or worse, but that's just part of like human growth, is to like
Mm.
have an expectation, see it, and then may now have your own creation of what that reality is. I don't
Mm.
know. That's awesome. I love that. Cheryl, what about you?
I think I have one from my childhood and one from my adult years, because I feel like childhood travel memories are so different than adult ones, like, because
Mm.
like our memories from our childhood like aren't, I don't think they're entire, like they're not complete and they're not always accurate, but they're like they can be really lovely and have some really like interesting moments. And I think it was just my family did a lot of travel as a kid, and my sisters and I just had a ball. I mean, our whole family had a ball, but like we we were just such kids on the trip, but like also appreciated the places we were. And I think we stayed really positive. So I think about when I was in second grade and we went to Disney World, and there was it was in November, which I think was a nice time to visit Florida and everything. However, there was a tropical storm that came through. So it was just like pouring rain this one day, just pouring rain. And so we wrote a song called about a tropical storm and how it was warm, because that was like this like thing that blew our minds, being from Seattle, that you could be warm in the rain. um and so we just like wrote a song about it, and it was like, I mean, something that like I wonder how my parents see that, if they see that as like something that ruined that day or whatever it was. But like to us, we just thought it was so fun and hilarious and unique, that we just had fun with it. Or like I think about when we went to the Grand Canyon and it was really foggy and you couldn't see much of it. And we thought our dad said something about a frog. So we just kept making jokes about the frog in the Grand Canyon. And like, I wonder for my parents if they were like, oh man, the Grand Canyon's foggy. Like, we don't even get a good view of it today. But we just like had a ball and we're making jokes about a frog. And so I think like we just had so much fun. I think enjoying where we were, and then also just like making the most of it, and having a sense of humor. And then I think in my adult years, I mean, Spain is the country that I just love, and it is a place where I want to keep going back. And I think that's, I have a lot of very fond memories with locals there. And just in a lot of situations where I'm just realized like, oh, no tourist would ever like get to experience this. And even that started when I was in middle school and my family did a trip to Europe, and we stayed with a family who was living in Spain, and they took us to this restaurant where like no tourists were there. It was all locals, and it was like an old wine cellar that's now a restaurant. You got to like cook your food at the table, and there's just a lot of like wonderful local memories. And I think that as much as I love seeing the highlights. I love seeing the touristy things that you just have to see when you visit the place. um but then also I think it's those off the beaten path things that really like stick inside of me as like, wow, that was so cool how that worked out, or how I connected with that person, or ate that cool food, or things like that. So
Yeah, I think
yeah.
just as like just a side note to what you just said, piggybacking on that, one other travel tip that I always give my clients is that the best recommendations for food is from locals. So
Mm.
whenever you get a chance, like I always say, like I can give you recommendations that like are well reviewed, but a lot of those are coming from people who have gone, like as tourists, have gone to those places. So whenever I go to any place, I try to either talk to people that work at the hotel, maybe the front desk people, and say, what are the best places to eat? Like, where would you go to eat? Or even
Mm.
I'm at a restaurant and because I love talking to the waiters, I'll be like, hey, besides this restaurant that you're at, where do you love to go? Like, where would you go with your family? And I write down and then we go there. So that's another like
Mm.
travel tip, is asking locals where they go to the bar, or go out to dinner, or go salsa dancing or whatever, and try to
I
hit those
love that.
spots. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, the
Yeah.
locals know the good stuff. So,
Right. Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's fun being around locals as well.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
mhm.
Yeah, it is.
Love that.
We are going to transition to the last part of our podcast now, called Wish You Were Here. So during this section, each of the three of us is going to highlight a travel attraction. We can think of it kind of like a postcard that's just a brief little snapshot of something cool from places that we've been that we would say, hey, this is really cool. I wish you were here. So Summer, what would you like to do for your Wish You Were Here?
Okay, so that was when I wasn't prepared. I'm like going through like the pendulum of things that I've done. Okay, so I'm gonna go with so I feel like there are very few places that when you get there, they look like on Instagram. Because now with Instagram, there's so many filters that you can put on everything that like kind of make things so that by the time you get there, you're like, it doesn't kind of look like I thought it would look. And when this October, I was able to go to Greece and was able to go to, of course, the iconic Greece island that everyone wants to go to, which is Santorini. And I went to Ia, the town of Ia, which is those whitewashed cliffside homes and things like that. And I remember, we did a cruise where we were cruising up to Santorini, and we were far enough away that I was like, "Is that snow? Is there snow on the?" Like, it didn't make sense, but it looked like snow on top of because Santorini is kind of high. It's not like a low island. It's a tall island. And I was like, I think there's snow on the top of that. And as we got closer, it really it was the white buildings that were lined up along the just along the bluffs there. And as I was in Fira, which is one of the towns, and Ia, and as I was looking out onto this picture blue water that was still as can be, and over these absolutely white buildings, it was that picture moment that you just like, I was like wanting my mind to take a picture of that spot and be like, singe this into your memory forever, because this is stunning. I mean, it is if you'd taken away the 10,000 people that were there and just been like, there is a reason that people are coming to this place, and it is absolutely stunning. So that was a place that I wish I could bring everyone I knew to, that spot that we were standing at, that I was like, this is iconic. It's beautiful. It's as beautiful as it seems.
Nice. That's a good wish you were here. I wish I was there.
Yeah.
Cheryl, what would you like to do for your wish you were here?
So mine today is inspired by a place I went this weekend, and Summer, a place that you were talking about going with your family. Coming up. And so this weekend, I just had a birthday recently, and so my husband booked this weekend actually before COVID and everything. And I love surprises, and so he just was on his phone, and all of a sudden he was like, "Oh, I know where we're going for your birthday weekend," and I was like, okay. And so he just booked something. I knew it was a VRBO, and I knew nothing else. So it was on the Olympic Peninsula, nearby Forks, and he rented a tiny house for us to stay in, which is like, I love tiny houses, and I used to live in one, and so it was just so special and perfect. But there's a lot of places I love on the Olympic Peninsula, quite a lot. But on our drive back home, we drove past Lake Crescent, and it's one of those places where, like, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, Lake Crescent is really great. And then when I go there, I'm like, no, this is so, so beautiful here. It's a really special place to Ryan and I, because my brother-in-law and Ryan's good friend passed away 7 years ago, and that was his favorite place. So we scattered his ashes there. So I went to the meadow where we, did that and said hi to Ben and everything. And that was just really special. But even just driving past that lake, I was like, this is just one of the most beautiful places on earth. And so I think people, like Summer, you need to go to Lake Crescent when you're on the Olympic Peninsula.
Yeah. Oh no, I've already booked. We're staying at Crescent Lodge. Yep, we're there.
Oh, that lodge.
Beautiful.
Oh, the lodge is so good. Yeah.
We are staying there. I were like bucking up the money to stay. I'm like, if I'm going big. I'm going the right way. We're staying at the lodge.
Are you staying in one of the little cabins, or where?
The little yeah, in the cottage.
Cabins?
The little which cottage? It's one of the cottages. Quote cottage.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, fun.
Right on the lake.
Have you been there before?
Yes, we have, but we
Okay.
were like too poor to stay there. So now it's been many years since my husband and I went there, and now we're taking our kids, and we have a little bit more money to spend.
Oh
And I'm
my
like, all right,
goodness.
we're blowing our money on the cottage on the lake.
Oh,
Yes,
you're
so
gonna
we are
love
That's
going
it.
there.
It's
great.
gorgeous. The restaurant there is so good, and it's just like such this peaceful place. There's really good hikes all around the lake, and
Yes,
it's just so beautiful there. So
I'm
I would
Mhm.
so
say
excited.
go to
Oh,
the
you just
Crescent.
got me even more excited.
It's so pretty out there. Yeah. Ryan, how about you?
I'm going to do a local one as well, somewhat inspired by our conversation with Summer. And I'm going to recommend the Pacific Science Center. I am obviously a science geek. Anyone who listens to the podcast knows that. And downtown Seattle is this great spot called the Pacific Science Center. It has a lot of different, I don't know if they call them pavilions, but they are different buildings that each have different themes. It really is geared towards, I would say, young to middle elementary age students for the most part. But it's, I mean, if you like science like I do, there's really cool stuff. And they often will have touring exhibitions that are there as well. So the Dead Sea Scrolls were there for a while. They've had other kind of touring, kind of National Geographic style things. But it's really, really great because it's very, very hands on. So there's lots of different really cool science related things. They've got a whole space section, which I love. They've got a section where they've got animatronic dinosaurs and things you can do that. I think they've got still a section with different parts of the body, and you can try things out and learn about how the body works. They've got a place for younger kids where you can do all this fun stuff with water and play with water. It's a really, really great thing to do, especially if you've got a younger kid, that especially if they're active, because it's a museum that's really geared for them to do things. And I had, as a kid growing up, we had an annual membership, and so we went a bunch, and I absolutely loved it. And they've changed it and updated it, but they still have some exhibitions that were there when I was a kid. I still remember they've got this big, huge crane sort of a thing that has this rope that comes down from it, and you can pull it from one side to the other, and then there's a weight on the other end, and it's all about leverage. And the farther away from the weight you pull it, the easier it is to pull and lift the weight. And so it's just these basic science concepts that they illustrate in such a great way. And they have live shows. They do a whole thing with liquid nitrogen and power of cold and all this really cool stuff. So it's a really fun spot. If you have anybody who's even remotely interested in science or that is in that age range, I would highly recommend the Pacific Science Center.
I would too. I agree. I concur with Ryan. I have my 4 kids. We have been there so many countless times. It is like also a mother's heaven because the mother is not entertaining the kids. It's them exploring, like I was
Nice.
like, oh, for just 3 hours, I want all the kids to just be like like, exploring and not asking me
Mhm.
questions and mommy, I'm bored. And the science center is amazing. And also, what I love about the Science Center is the IMAX movies and things they have there. These
Mhm.
amazing, like
Yeah.
30-minute videos about all different kinds of science, like the life of a butterfly, and all these different movies that my kids absolutely loved. Yeah,
Mm.
Yeah.
that's a
I've been
great.
waiting to take my stepson there, and just, I mean, right now we can't go do anything, but
Yeah.
I'm just so excited because it's one of those, he's so busy and he is really interested in a lot of things. And even like, we'll just like sometimes just sit and Google questions about animals or stuff like that. And so I'm just like so excited to take him there. It's going to be
Yes.
good.
Well, Summer, thank you
I feel
so
like you're like my
much.
best friends.
The feeling is mutual.
This is so awesome. I just made 2 new friends.
Oh, yay. Well, we're so happy that you were on our podcast, and we are sure that our listeners loved you too. So please plug your business. Tell us where to find you.
So the name of my travel advising business is More to Explore Vacations. So really, you can find me mainly on Facebook. More to Explore Vacations. I have reviews from clients who I've sent on different vacations and things like that. So that's probably the best way to find me is on Facebook at More to Explore Vacations.
That's great. And we have social media and Facebook as well. Surprise!
Yes.
And so we would love it if our listeners would follow us on social media. We are at Timwy Podcast. That's TMWY for Take Me With You Podcast. We are on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram.
You can also email us at timwypodcast@gmail.com. Send us your travel stories. Tell us what the biggest ripoff that you have experienced on a trip is.
Yes, or you can call us and leave us a voicemail about it. Our number is 406-763-8699, or if it's easier to remember, 406-POD-TIMWY. We would love it if you would rate and review our podcast. Let other people know what you think. Subscribe to the podcast to make sure you don't miss any of our episodes, and share about this episode on social media so other people can get the wonderful experience that Sommer has shared with us today.
As always, thank you to Beth Reed Miller for the awesome artwork. You can check out more of Beth's artwork at Beth Is Something. And thank you to Erica Corbin for the use of her song Round the Globe. You can listen to Erica's music wherever music is sold or streamed.
Sommer, it has been great having you on the podcast today. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. I can talk travel with any travel lovers any day. You are like, we are kindred spirits. I love it.
Oh, we're going to have you back then for sure.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we've got for this week. So until next time, remember to take me with you.
Take me with you.
Can we get a sailboat chasing down the sunset as we float round and round the globe? Salty air and balmy nights, guided only by the lights above, and a little love. Oh, the world is out there waiting to